we've all been there. It's late at night, you're tired. This is the moment where we have to decide whether or not we're going to power through, get more work done, or power down, recover, rest, and just handle it the next day. Welcome to the Self-Leadership Experiment, where we take an evidence-based perspective on all things organizational behavior. My name is Scott Dust. I'm a management professor, as well as a team member for an HR tech company. I'll be talking with my co-host, Louis DiCarlo, and we'll break down what's real and what's not, and what works and what doesn't work. Thanks for joining the conversation. So the topic of the day, power through or power down. So we've all been there. It's late at night, you're tired, and your inbox just keeps filling up with unread messages. And this is the moment where we have to decide whether or not we're going to power through, get more work done, or power down, recover, rest, and just handle it the next day. On the one hand, you can power through so that you stay on top of things. And that's important because that can limit stress because you have everything under control. And also it's kind of rewarded by businesses because they reward productivity. But on the other hand, if you power down, it makes sure that you maintain your sanity, your well-being, you can rest, recover, and be more productive the next day. And it ultimately prevents burnout, which is good for your long-term productivity. So the question is, what do you do? Which one do you choose? And a lot of times I think personality characteristics drive this decision, things like personality, motivation, traits, and things like that. But what we really should be thinking about is the situational elements, things like, can certain people wait for the response? What does your calendar look like over the next few days? Can I handle it? And then have you been doing lately on just self-care, taking care of your stress levels and getting sleep and things like that? So I think in those moments of whether we're supposed to power through or power down, what we actually should be doing is, thinking about the implications of the decision.
I'm 100% power down guy, just for the record. And I like to think there's very few times where it's power on for me. But at the same time, like it's one, that's my personality. And two, in just about every work place that I've been in, the expectation and the culture wasn't necessarily power on. But there's a lot of places that are, right? And I think my view may change if I worked at a place where they were constantly being measured on billable hours or amount of, or customer, if you're in customer services, right? You may feel the need and required to provide a timely instant response. So,
right.
I guess my biggest question is what have you seen or what are you seeing? Like, how are the industries that are, management consulting, big law firms, the big accounting firms, notorious for power on, I think is part of, we would probably categorize those as, are those shifting? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that you're right. I mean, it is industry specific, and then it's also organization specific. I think a lot of the organizations dictate the organizational culture to some degree, right? Like it's going to be tough to be competitive as an organization if you're embedded within an industry that's power through, but you're in power down type culture. I do think that there is a little bit of the edge being taken off, but not enough to make a massive difference. So I think that there's a little bit more leeway and there's a little bit more comfort level as well from the employee side in communicating limits. And to some degree, it's because they have a language for it now. And I think there's more conversations about mental health happening than there ever has been before. And that's good. I think that when the COVID pandemic forced everybody to work online and then schools were shut down and it was really challenging and lots of people were getting sick and needing to take time off, all of that created the circumstances for organizations to be a little bit more accommodating and recognizing that, sometimes people need to power down instead of power through. So I do think that the edge is taken off a little bit, but there's still some industries that are hyper competitive. It's just venture capital, investment bankers. I really highly doubt that they're ever going to get to the point where there's a power down culture or a power down theme within the industry. But for some of the more like knowledge worker, professional services, I do think the edge is off a little bit, and organizations are reconsidering whether or not they want to have one culture or the other. And that's a good thing because they recognize that if people really are a valuable resource in terms of staying competitive, we need the best talent. And to get the best talent, you need to make sure that you are aligning with whatever that talent feels as if is their ideal environment. And that might be more of a, power through, power down in the middle type environment or something like that.
I agree with you. That's a good point. I think some of the workplace industries that are on the extreme end of power on probably aren't meeting, halfway necessarily yet, but perhaps, like you said, the discussions are being had, yet the expectation is ultimately probably still there that if you're going to work here, we really need you in power on mode. That's just what we do. And so I think at that point, it's picking your head up and realizing your personality, your preference, or your mental health, or whatever, you need to just reconsider it, right? And then maybe that's time when to move, right? Because, if you're not happy, if you're always in power on mode, and the consequences are your mental health, and
that's not good. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And I honestly, in a way, I almost wish that I had the constitution that you have in being more of a power down type mindset. Like that's just your behavioral tendencies based upon your makeup of a variety of different traits. I'm kind of more in the middle, but I definitely have people very close to me that are on the other end of the extreme where they're power through no matter what. It doesn't matter what environment they're in, they're power through. And ideally we find organizations that are a fit for wherever we are on that continuum. But I think when it's all said and done, all of us need to get into that mindset, especially those though that are more power through, of think about the situation. Does this really need, am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for somebody else? Like, what's the rationale behind this? Because if we're not careful, it can be unhealthy.
Exactly. And I will say this, I am a power down guy, but I've probably never worked in an organization that was a power on place. So I've never really gone against the grain or taken I've found employment where generally power down is okay, provided that there's not a deliverable due or an action due, right? And that's different, right? So I'm not in an environment where it's constantly, this is due, this is due, this is due, this is due. I needed that yesterday, right? So I think that's important though, right? I mean, you got to find whichever one fits your personality and is healthy for you as a person. Like you just have that awareness, right?
Yeah. I think that's key. Yeah. Being able to be aware of your situation, aware of your own tendencies, make sure there's a match, think through the circumstances. That's all really good advice. All right. Thanks everybody for joining. For more resources on bridging the gap between science and practice for all things organizational behavior, go to scottdust.com. And from there, you can subscribe to the monthly newsletter, as well as find additional evidence-based insight through social media, YouTube, and podcasts. Thanks.